Hey 320, Michael here. You wouldn't download a car, or would you? Thanks to 3D printing technology, it is now possible to. 3D printing is a breakthrough in prototyping technology that allows for digital 3D object files to be transferred into 3D models. This technology allows for streamlined prototyping and fast repair of specialized parts. But how does it work? A 3D printer works using a heated printing head and a coil of polymer. This printing head heats the polymer like a hot glue gun and creates a 3D object by layering sheets of melted plastic. Layer by layer, the printer traverses the object until the 3D model is created. This technology allows anybody to create any item in the world at their fingertips. Or does it? 3D printing is limited by several factors, first of which are the dimensions of the object that can be printed. Because of the constraints of where the nozzle can print, there is a size limit of 3D printed projects. Larger projects can still be entirely 3D printed, however, by printing in pieces, but all pieces have a maximum size. Another limit on the system is that, as of now, commercial printers are only capable of printing in plastic. Plastic is lightweight and soft, with several limitations as a construction material. It is not tremendously strong. 3D printing is also a slow process, taking several hours to possibly days to complete a project depending on the size. However, these do not overshadow the major shift that has come from 3D printing's ability to create objects at the rate of information on the internet, allowing you to, if you want, to download a car or a gun.
What is up, 320 Alert Nation? I'm your host, Joseph Joestar. Let's get raw.
One eternity later.
Alright, into the news. Our first story today is insane, unbelievable. In 2015, New South Wales passed the Firearms and Weapons Prohibition Legislation Amendment Bill 201, which means 3D printed weapons are now illegal, and we have a photo to show that. Also in the news, one of the more technologically advanced countries, Japan, had a very sneaky way of getting an arrest. A Japanese man was arrested in 2014 for having 2 fully functional 3D printed firearms in his home. He was arrested because he got caught uploading videos of him and his gun making progress to YouTube. This is a prime example of why you need to be okay with what you're going to post online, because it could come around to bite you back. But get this. Japan doesn't even have a law outlawing 3D printed guns. Isn't that just insane? Finally, in the news, in America, yes, land of the free, home of the brave, we have the Undetectable Firearms Act. This means our guns have to be detectable by a metal detector. The ATF states that the NFA doesn't require regulations of handguns that don't meet these requirements. As well, you do not need a license to produce your firearm. It just doesn't add up. Recently, California introduced a new law that requires 3D printed firearms not at least 80% complete by August 2018 to require a metal stamp allowing it to be detected. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the news. 320 Alert Nation, now over 80 students.
What's happening, Forum? So there's this thing called 3D printing. Don't know if you've heard of it. But because the internet, some nerd had to weaponize it. So there's this group going around called Defense Distributed, and they just put out this video that some call a bit disturbing. What the functional firearms? That's a working pistol made out of only a nail and 3D printed parts. But don't go downloading your killing machines yet. Boom! Headshot! Now I know what you're probably thinking. Why would anybody make and use a gun with only one bullet that might explode after every shot? Well, Defense Distributed has another product that they offer.
We're even beginning to see an emerging industry and market for ghost guns. They are being produced without
Now for those who don't know, the lower receiver is the only part of a gun that's actually regulated like a gun. This type of product is nothing new though. Companies have been selling build-your-own lower receivers for decades. And that brings us to the comment question of the day, which comes from a user named Bing, and they say,
Oh hey, didn't see you there. Our suggested policy consists of two parts: the regulation of 3D printers and the regulation of 3D printed firearms. Our first point is that 3D printers should not be regulated. 3D printers are not the issue. They are just one of many means of making firearms at home. There are other means to create firearms at home, like the ghost gunner or just crude construction. We should even consider the fact that firearms have been purchasable on the black market for generations without regulation. The point is that there is no need for 3D printers for criminals to get firearms illegally. Even if 3D printer regulation worked, criminals would just find other means to get firearms like they have been doing for ages. That being said, we also do not believe that 3D printer regulation would even work. There would be no feasible way to enforce 3D printer regulation. People are going to do whatever they want with 3D printers once they have them. One might suggest that we regulate the 3D software models, but that is truly impossible to stop too, considering the number of sources on the internet and the untraceability on networks like Tor. The only way to stop completely the ability to print firearms would be to take 3D printers out of the hands of everyone, and that would not be a fair or logical solution for the law-abiding citizens of the free world that we live in. Our second point is that 3D printed firearms would fall under current gun policy. As we have previously talked about, there are current regulations which 3D printed firearms fall under. It is our position that 3D printed firearms would apply to those laws the same way as conventional firearms. Examples of these current laws include the right to personally make firearms at home, the regulation to include metal in homemade firearms, and the requirement to get a tax stamp and approval for any homemade NFA firearm. NFA firearms being things such as suppressors, short barrels, and machine guns. As you can see, firearm regulations already address many of the concerns that people have with 3D printed firearms, without specifically addressing that 3D printed nature. Any firearm, no matter how it comes into existence, is applicable to current rights and laws. Any policy changes, whether more restrictive or less restrictive, should defer to the general regulations of all firearms. The same general principles of the effectiveness of firearm regulations apply regardless of how the firearm is made.